And Jim Borg is here, the Washington editor for Reuters News Pictures. Gentlemen, thank you. I'm sorry that the video that we ran earlier just made me a little bit emotional watching that. I'm not sure if you guys got to see it, but it is just awful. Chris, I'm going to start with you. In this crowd, you had your average Trump rally and boat parade attendee, but also people who came suited up in what looks like tactical gear. How does the FBI start locating these people?
Well, it's all hands on deck for the FBI, Don. This is federal. This is not a state capitol. This is not a rally, anywhere across the country. This is our nation's capital. This is the center of our democracy. So they're going to bring in field office resources from every field office in the surrounding area: Richmond, Baltimore, Delaware, Philadelphia. And it is going to be a full court press. They'll take all this video, all this footage that's been posted from the surveillance cameras. They're going to make stills out of each individual perpetrator where they damaged a door or a window or assaulted an officer. It's all going to be sent out to local law enforcement and sheriff's departments across the country. And of course, they're asking the general public for tips and leads too. So I think every single person that participated in property damage and injuring officers and violence, every one of them is going to get tracked down.
You think they'll get them?
I do.
Okay, good. I
think this is a challenge for Chris Wray, and I think it's a challenge that they're up for. They're good at forensics. Mm-hmm. The Bureau is. This is their forte. Mm-hmm. That, of course, they'll be working with their state and local partners, but this is going to go out across the country. No matter where these people go back to, they're going to find them.
Jim, you were there right in the middle of that riot, the chaos of the riot. Were some of these people clearly from extremist or militant groups? Could you tell that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, absolutely. I think it's important to note that, some of the coverage I'm seeing, implies that this was a really coordinated effort and as if it was one group. And it was far from that. It was many, many different groups coming together with the common denominator being intense anger. And that was the feeling of the day. And I think we all experienced that. We all felt that. And we all had a lot of that directed at us as members of the media, as law enforcement did have it directed at them as members of law enforcement. And, I saw quite a bit of that, that video I had not seen before, and that was horrific. But there were horrific scenes with members of the media as well, with, I know your crews, with our TV crews, with many still photographers who were out there. And the anger was just intense. But to get back to your question, there were many extremist groups that we've seen before at major rallies in D.C., really across the spectrum of right-wing extremism.
Was there any indication to you that some of these rioters in tactical gear are current or former law enforcement or military?
Well, I mean, I did see people involved in the rioting and going in and out of the Capitol who had apparent military gear. I actually did see one or two that had police patches on their body armor or the tactical stuff that they were wearing. None particularly identifiable to a particular branch of service or law enforcement agency. I can't say that. But there were certainly some very well kitted out people there involved in the attack on the building.
Interesting. Chris, for years, we've heard warnings about white nationalist groups, anti-government groups like the Boogaloo Boys. Domestic terror has been a growing threat. Is there a direct line that we can draw from the warnings that we have been given by the intel community and what we saw yesterday?
I think so. We've known about these groups since the 90s. And, of course, they've evolved over the years, and they went quiet after 9/11. They got back active again in the 2000s. And the FBI tracks them very closely. And then there are other organizations. When I was head of the criminal division, that was our number one priority, was domestic terrorism. So I'm sure the FBI is tracking the extremists on both ends of the political spectrum. There should have been some intelligence provided to the Metropolitan Police and the Capitol Police. Mm-hmm. But I got to tell you, Don, this was a failure of leadership. I'm sure they had intelligence. They were flat-footed. And the poor officers on the street, on the front lines, bore the brunt of it. And there should have some heads roll in this case. Poor preparation, poor equipment, poor training, no anticipation, all reactive.
Listen, it's been such a long week, I'm forgetting what day it is. I said yesterday, but that was Wednesday. It was actually the day before yesterday.
Right.
Jim, listen, you heard multiple rioters saying that they were looking to find and execute Mike Pence. I just want to play this for you. Listen, and then we'll talk.
Sure.
So it sounds like they were saying, hang Mike Pence, right? You say that
They were.
you're shocked that more people don't know that this was being said at the Capitol. Was this something you heard frequently out there?
Yeah, I mean, it was really, as I said earlier, you know, that the anger was intense throughout the day, and you heard that expressed in a lot of ways. But one of the most common ones that I heard was anger specifically directed at the vice president. And over the course of the 5 or 6 hours I was in that crowd outside the Capitol, it was really kind of a constant. I was frankly surprised, when I wrote a tweet earlier today, reporting what I had heard, that this was news to people, because I was surprised it hadn't been more widely reported, because it was just such a constant. I mean, that audio that you just played was hundreds of people at the top of the east front steps of the Capitol, at the doors going right into the rotunda of the Capitol, chanting that for quite some time. It wasn't a momentary thing. I heard multiple conversations, loudly and publicly, not anything people were trying to hide, discussing what are we going to do with the vice president? We should go in and find the vice president. We should hang the vice president. It wasn't a momentary thing. It wasn't a single conversation. It was repeated.
And there's lots to talk about, more to discuss, but we don't have time for it, but we'll be discussing it in the coming hours on the network, like the pipe bombs and the plastic restraints and so on and so forth. Thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah, I did. If you have a moment, I wanted to clarify that about the plastic restraints, because one of my colleagues made some of those photos that you have shown of the rioters inside the Senate chamber and in the area of the Senate chamber with those plastic zip ties and restraints. And there's been a lot of reporting today that they brought those with them. But he actually corrected that and said that moments before he made those photos, he actually saw them break into the Capitol storage box, right there outside the chamber, and took them out of that storage box where they were with the escape hoods and other safety materials that are kept on hand right outside the Senate chamber. So whether any of those were brought, with them with any kind of intent or purpose, I don't know, but that seemed worth clarifying.
Well, they still grabbed them, and for what reason?
Absolutely.
And when you have those kinds of restraints, what's your intention is to use them? Right, one would think. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Chris.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it. Social media companies slapping down big bands today, but plans for the riot, including calls for violence, were being posted and viewed thousands of times across multiple platforms. How did law enforcement miss this? CNN investigates next.